That's live now.
So sorry for the delay. I had to wait for storm. We had quite a little rainstorm. Lights went off or flashed a few times. So it's kind of weird getting rain this late in the year or having a thunderstorm. But so we kind of waited on that. Also, we had to do the homework tonight, so had to get that out of the way. So we're running a little late. So we're going to cut it short tonight, but we will answer all the questions that you have. Because I think we're going to do another video again tomorrow, because there's been some conversation about right rear spring loads and right rears and this and that, and I kind of want to have this conversation. So in the previous text we were having, you two guys, you know who I'm talking, let's maybe try to get together tonight and clarify a few things, because I want to you know, throw a little pitch in there. And then also, Brian, I want you to fill out some forms on your car, you know, before you tear it apart, you know, so I'll email those to you. So we'll be doing that. Tonight, we're going to talk about rebound again, mainly on the right front, okay? So we're going to talk about that being compression and that being rebound, okay? So since that video, I've had a lot of people ask me what I meant by rebound. And the rebound, you know, it's interpreted a little different for different people, okay? So when the shock is compressed, right front, when the shock is compressed on the car, we're going to call that compression. When we pick the gas up and it starts to extend out, transfer the weight to the rear, that's the rebound, okay? So often, you know, a person puts a shock on and they go, oh, I didn't like it. And I ask them why they didn't like it. And they said, well, because it had too much rebound. You know, it killed all my drive. Okay, well, that's what rebound's going to do. It's going to kill drive. But it's going to create, and multiple conversations just today with that same thing, you know, late model modifieds. And the least amount of people that fight this issue is the Mod Light guys. So, so rebound is going to kill drive in the car. It's and it's going to make the car turn better. So we're going to look at our car such as that, its ability to turn versus its ability to go forward. Okay, rebound can be produced in multiple ways. So there's many guys out there, shock builders doing all kinds of things. So can't really answer for them. We know how we do it, and we do it based on bleed and preload and a certain amount of bleed, and this is what we like to see. So you got to have, in order to create good rebound, in order to have a car that gets around the track well, that gets on the nose, that turns, that makes a drive, you got to have decent rebound, and you got to have it built correctly, okay? So we're going to cover a few things like how we mark or call out that rebound and what that means. So we ain't made it to our number yet, have we?
No.
No. I feel like tonight's going to be a little slow. It was late. I was teasing her about nobody being on, but so when we do a shock,
several on though.
When we do a shock, this is how we do it. You know, right front. Okay, so it's right front one. The one stands for modified bleed. Okay, if it was a right front two, it probably wouldn't say 50. It'd say something like right front 70/30. Okay, so right front 1-50 means that 50 is the 1 inch pound number. I'm going to show you that on these dyno sheets. 50, 75, or 100. Okay, these all have a modified bleed that's fairly big. Okay, smaller than a factory bleed or what we would do in a 70/30, but bigger than what we do in the Gorilla Fist. Okay, so in a standard modified sport mod stock car style shock, you know, these three options, this is a 7, 8, 9, sometimes we do a 125, okay? Most of the time we go ahead and jump to a Gorilla Fist 200. We build these Gorilla Fists from 200 to 800, with different builds being good for different cars. Okay, so you'll see it'll say right front 1-50. The 50, the 75, or the 100 is the dyno number at 1 inch. Okay, so we dyno at 10. We dyno at 10. And the 1 inch is at 100.
Yeah,
Okay.
there we can see it.
Okay, so that's the average chart. Now, there's reasons why we do each chart. There's just reasons why we do it. That's the open closed. As you can see, this 100 carries a little bit of 0 point in it. But on this chart, dyno the way we dyno, everybody does it different, but on this chart, right front 1 dash 100 means at 1 inch per second, dynoed at 10. So when it crosses the 1, we're going to be at 100 pounds on the average. Okay, which it goes up when you dyno at 6. It changes when you're, you know, I think Auroring and CTW calls this a different chart, you know, force versus velocity, absolute velocity. So we call it open closed. It changes the numbers the way your offset is. If you have the offset different set on your dyno, then your 0 changes. Okay, we do what we do because of what we look at. And on this particular one, if you was to look, you know, we're running out here at 10 inches, almost at 250 pounds, okay? This isn't a 250 pound shock, but it does have a little more compression than normal, and it runs out about 120, 125, okay? And it's the way the offset is in the shock on the dyno that makes the compression look like it's more. So we kind of do that because the low speed compression has feel to it, and that shows the feel. This shows the functionality, how the thing's really going to function. So right front 1 dash 100, okay, crosses at 100. When we go to a Gorilla Fest, this is a 0 point call out, not anything else. It's based on a 14 build. Okay, so throughout this 14 build, as we preload it more, the shock performs a higher level. Okay, so here's a 300, and this is a 500. Okay, we're still crossing that at 100, but that's not what's important here. Okay, then that shock 500 is somewhere around 500 or more at 0. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. So we build a right front 1 dash 50, 7500, and then we build the Gorilla Fist 200, 300, 400, up to 800. Some of those shocks run better than others because of the build, the nature of the shock, the amount of bleed in it. So an 800 Gorilla Fist is going to stay on the right front a long time. As the Rebound gets bigger, okay, this one's going to transfer weight very quickly. This one's going to be better. So, you know, good on a B mod, good on an A mod, good on, we run at 300 on A mods and B mods all day long. Okay, when a car has the ability to turn the rear tires, it's going to spin the rear tires. You're going to want to free the front up. It's not what you want to do, but that's what you're going to do. Okay, so a guy that's got the ability to buzz the tires is generally not going to want a lot of rebound, okay, because he's going to turn the car on the rear tires. But we need to get the car up on the front tires, and we need to turn the car on the front tires. This is why rebound's so important, because, you know, I had a conversation with a guy today, and he's like, well, my car hooks up pretty well for the amount of wheel spin, okay, but we can't race that way. It just, those days are running short. So if we're running on wheel spin and trying to hook up, tighten up a car to make wheel spin, those days are running short. In this part of the country, on a 604 IMCA tire, we don't have that luxury anymore. You're not going to win races spinning the rear tires. It's just too tough. And if you do, it's going to be open motor, a lot of moisture, or you're really going to have something figured out. Or you're going to have your motor powered down to where it's an open motor crate, you know. So rebound needs to be tuned, okay? You can't just put rebound on and go, I like it or I don't like it. you got to tune it. You got to tune it with spring and drive, okay? And you got to look at your car based on the car's ability to turn versus go forward. So rear tires pushing front tires, and there's a lot of factors that come involved in this. You know, droop numbers, thrust angle, you know, bump stops, no bump stops, spring rates, all the stuff, all that good stuff up front. So a little rebound, again, we'll just go over it real quickly. That's the compression stroke. When it comes back out, that's the rebound stroke. You want a car that stays on the nose a little bit. You want to load up that tire. So for me, it's more about tire load. You know, everybody's so concerned about load numbers to a load stick, which does give you a little indication how much available tire load that you possibly have. When we get the team website up, team members will have access to the wheel load calculator, so you guys can start loading some of them numbers from your load stick in there and seeing how the car performs as it goes through its motion. We want to make grip at the tire, okay? Nothing else matters. We want to make grip at the tire. So our video tomorrow that we might do, and we're probably going to do it during the day because we got Thanksgiving festivities to take care of later in the day. It's probably going to be a little bit about right rear load numbers and kind of, you know, where we're at on that deal and that stuff. But today, rebound, we've got to have rebound in the front. So many guys are mistaken about what they want in their cars as far as rebound. Momentum will beat drive. And I feel like in today's world, it's going to beat it a lot, you know. So, you know, like a guy told me one time, a wise man once told me that if you're going to be fast, you got to do it on the gas. So if you think you're going to drive deep into the corner with your foot on the brake, you're not going to win that race. So think about it. I don't know if we got questions.
Yeah, Jack Sartain said, where do we mostly race at, far as inches per second?
It's pretty slow, but here's where that gets, it's a great question, Jack, okay, and it gets really tricky. Because the data says we all race at less than 6, okay, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches. Okay, so I always pay attention to other forms of racing, okay? Some of it does not apply. So when a guy, just like the right rear load numbers for a late model, is probably not going to apply to a modified, okay? And this is part of the complaint, okay? But when you go back to the question, what is the speeds we run? The data says we run less than 6 inches, okay? So I'm going to drag this out, Jack, because I need to make this point. So Haas, F1, Haas in 2019 started out the year, I mean, just knocking them dead. And then they get to about race 4 or 5, and they can't line up. They can't. And then, so after the races, they go through the race. Everybody, they all got their headsets on. They're watching the race. They're watching the data. They're all talking about this and that and what happened. And the team principal says, everything's right. We got the car's right. The data's right. The data's right. The data's right. You know, but no one asked the driver, what's the car doing? So you can data yourself to death. But at some point, common sense has got to come into the play. Okay? The car doesn't have any acceleration, doesn't have any speed. It's not fast enough to win races. Okay, but the data says we race at less than 6 inches. So if we dyno at less than 6 inches, we can start gassing down and doing all these things to accommodate the shock at 6 inches or less. Okay? But something in that scenario seems to be wrong, because when we go out gas down, so when you take a normal gas shock and you go out and you run it at 30, 40, 50 pounds of gas, and there's plenty of people recommending this, okay? And I feel like I don't know what anybody else does. This shock right here, it's honed and it's treated on the ID, okay? Has a low drag divider. We take a weight, it's like 1.2 ounces, and put on that divider and it'll move. So we're not getting hung up on the divider, okay? The divider must move freely, and the dividers suck at doing their job. Okay, the divider piston must move freely in order for the shock to process oil properly. And when you're at 30 pounds of gas, and a lot of shocks, the divider is just struggling, okay? So the shock's struggling, okay? So the dyno says it works, okay? So as long as the dyno says it works, I guess it's great on the racetrack. Yet you can go out and put it on the racetrack and have issues. But the drivers don't get out of the car and go, oh, it's a low gas issue. They get out and they go, oh, they can't prep a racetrack. Car sucks, tires suck, you know, motor was down. Whatever the reasoning, nobody ever gets out and goes, I think we should add more gas in our shock. Okay, the shock has to have gas in it to fundamentally function. Okay, if it doesn't fundamentally function, that's a tough one. If it doesn't function properly, it ain't gonna work. That's the problem. And whatever gas pressure you build up, and I know that's not what you ask about, gas pressure, but a lot of times when people ask about speed, it's based on gas pressure, okay? So we're seeing very low speeds, okay? We had some issues with a shock one time with this ring right here, okay? And this ring kept coming off. And now we're using Loctite to hold this ring in. We used to use silicone. Well, we got into some bad silicone, so the ring started falling off. Okay, well, a shock with proper amount of gas, this ring means nothing, absolutely nothing. It's there to protect the end of the tube, okay? But when the ring started falling off, the glands started moving up and down in the seal head, or the seal head started moving up and down in the tube, and it would pop the circlip crooked, okay? Well, none of this would happen. This is a 100-pound shock on 100 pounds of gas. None of this would have happened if we weren't seeing shaft speeds high enough to make it happen. Okay, so data says, you know, very slow speeds, 3 inches. Reality says, I believe it's more. And it doesn't, and at some point it doesn't matter. If the dyno says the shock will run at 10 inches a second with 50 pounds of gas, but you could put it on the car, and the car says no, better listen to the car. So we don't see as much speeds as, data doesn't provide as much speed as we think. Okay, there are some moves within a move that show up on the histogram side of data that generally isn't talked about, that may be at rates much higher than the travel indicator that on the data is showing. So when the data says 6 inches, the histogram possibly might say more. So, any other questions, on?
No.
Oh,
no.
That was a short one. So, you know, rebound, it's really important to the car. Everybody's talking about load numbers right now, and except for the extended load on the left rear, your load numbers, your load, forget the number, your load is held in the tire with rebound in the shock. Okay, so it's created by lateral forces in the car that compress that spring. Okay, when you take your static load and increase it, it makes your dynamic load better. Okay, none of it means anything if you don't hold the car in that position for a certain amount of time. And that time is dictated by the size of the racetrack. Okay, it's dictated by how much off-throttle time you have in your car. Okay, when you go out and you ask Rodney Sanders how much rebound he runs, he'll probably tell you he runs less than a guy like me or the average Joe's going to need, because his off-throttle time obviously is much better than the rest of ours. Okay, his throttle response around the racetrack is much better than the rest of ours. This is why guys like him win a lot of races. It's not always what they do, it's how they do it. Rebound kind of makes up for not knowing how to do it. So a lot of us weekend warriors, we need rebound in our cars. It's going to hold the load on the tire needs to have to make the corner. Okay, whether it's right front, left front, or right rear, all three of them corners need to have some load in them. Okay, so I guess that might wrap this up for tonight.
Danny Crane wants to know what time you're thinking about going live tomorrow. Do you have a time?
I think it would be best if we did it in the afternoon. You know, it gives everybody a little time. What we say, about 3 o'clock?
That's fine.
Yeah. So we'll kind of leave that, up in the air. But we're going to shoot for about 3 o'clock, and it'll be based on phone calls. I feel like tomorrow will be, probably a little bit slow because the day before Turkey. But yeah, we'll shoot for about 3 o'clock. So you guys, if you want to get involved in that, I'll put something out there on Facebook that we're going to do this deal. I think there's a lot to be learned. Okay, so. We need input. So don't be afraid to ask questions, because no one really knows everything about this, by no means, me included. So guys like Danny Crane, ask great questions, okay, which makes you think. So it all goes back to, two minds. When two minds come together, they create a third. Okay, so this is how issues are resolved. So tomorrow we'll shoot for about 3 o'clock. We'll do right rear spring loads. There's some stuff going on there. I just don't feel like it's right, but it is what we're doing. So guy said one time, it doesn't matter what's right or what's wrong, because we're probably all doing it wrong, and somebody's going to win on that wrong. Okay, and as soon as they do, it makes it right. So if we're all doing the wrong thing, it becomes right. But sometimes I think we need to just be better at what we do and perfect right and do right, so maybe 1 or 2 rights will be wrong. So tomorrow, 3 o'clock. Any other questions or anything going on?
No.
Okay, guys. Appreciate you. It's Thanksgiving. It's that time of the season, time to be thankful. We had a great year, even with all the pandemic. It's been a great year, so I thank you as customers. Me and Yvette both. It's just, we got a lot to learn. We got a lot to do, and it's going to be interesting, 2021, so God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.